Hey, it's Millie, and welcome to the Generalist World podcast. This is a show where I interview people from the Generalist World community, and we talk things like the future of work, careers, predictions, their hot takes, and really understand what their squealy careers have looked like. So if you're a generalist who feels like they're living in a specialized world, this is the podcast for you. And we're live with Caitlin. We've already been talking for 10 minutes, Caitlin, and we haven't even gotten into the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so jazzed because my nerdy side is I can feel it in my bones that this is going to be an epic conversation. So I'm very excited for people. I was just thinking of a question while I was like, how do I set the stage for Caitlin? And I'd actually like to kind of handball it over to you. And so if someone is listening right now and they haven't met you, they haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, what's the headline? Why should they listen? Why should they tune in? Why should they listen to what Caitlin Ferguson has to say?
Well, so Caitlin Ferguson, I do embedded operations for founders. Got into this work because I had grown and exited a business, helped over 100 founders in my career. And actually, it was another Generalist World community member who kicked my butt one day and said, "Why are you not out on your own building your own portfolio career?" Had me sit down and think about and actually trace the impact of my work. And I had generated over $20 million for my clients and through my own efforts. So started my own work after that, and have had the enjoyable experience of working with founders, helping to grow and scale their firms ever since. So I've seen some things. You can't scare me. So hopefully I can bring some of those stories into our conversation today.
So working with 100 founders, I know, Caitlin, that you would have seen people make the same mistake. This is probably the most painful thing to watch, is the same mistake. What is like the top one or two mistakes that people just keep making and you're like, stop?
Oh man. I think the big one that I have to work with founders on all the time is getting too stuck at the whiteboard, too stuck in their brains. They want to ideate and think their way out of a problem, and they're going to make the thing perfect on the whiteboard, and then it'll all be beautiful. And it's a natural human response, right? It's safe at the whiteboard. It's safe to imagine a future. It's absolutely thrilling to imagine a future, right? But there's a phrase of no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. And so a big part of getting founders going is kicking them away from the whiteboard, quite often, sometimes literally, and forcing them to get out and have conversations and beta test and try and see what they learn. I can't think of a time where I have talked to a founder where the idea they had when they were in the whiteboard stage proved to be the final thing that actually got traction. It is only through those iterations that they manage to get it to the place where it was generating money, generating interest, generating revenue. I would say the other one, and it depends on the stage they're in, right? Like if you're a solo shop, this won't make sense. But when you're hitting that stage where you've got 3, 4, 5 more folks working for you, it can be really hard to let go. It can be really hard to let other people take the reins and make something their own, and frankly slow down long enough to delegate effectively to someone else. But I'm here to say, if you don't learn how to zoom out and let go and let other people grow in the garden that you've planted, you will not scale. You will have an expensive hobby that will burn you out very quickly. So I would say those two are kind of the themes I would see across pretty much everybody. Founders tend to be big visionaries and excited and want to have their hands in everything. And I'm not necessarily as much of an advocate of like founder mode, that Brian Chesky conversation that came out months, if not a year ago now, of like, just be a little bit in everything. Like, great recipe for not having a good time building a business. So I would say those are probably the top two.
And what's the alternative to founder mode? What's Caitlin's, what would you suggest to founders if they've only read Brian's essay Then you're like, actually, there's this other world. What would that world be?
Yeah. So if we get the privilege of being invited into somebody's business and getting to work with them as a client, one of the first things we do is an inventory of what is it that they value as an individual, what are their energy givers and deprivers, and how can we design an operational flow that serves them as individuals, allows them to thrive and be in their zone of genius, and then frankly just delegates everything else to others who would be just as excited and just as energized to own the thing that they would rather eat 10 frogs raw than have to do, right? And so I think any founder could probably do that, is just say like, you know what, I am super energized by being on stage or having conversations in the community or strategizing, and I would rather set my own hair on fire than draft a budget. Great. Hand that to somebody else though, just because, this probably also should have fallen in things that I don't see founders do very well. Budgeting and financials is probably a third big pain point, but just be clear about where you excel, what makes you excited to get up in the morning and do, and then find the people who are your complements to own the rest. Make sure you give them really clear delegation. And then some check-in points to make sure that they're succeeding. And then let go. They're going to learn. They're going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. But mathematically, you only have so many hours in a week. Even if, for the sake of argument, somebody can only do something 80% as well as you can. If you add another full-time person of that, you can pull back, have better work-life balance. Your spouse will thank you. Your kids, if you have them, will thank you. Your health will thank you. Your doctor will get off of your ass. Building a business doesn't have to be an unenjoyable experience. You didn't go found something to wake up every day and feel handcuffed to tasks that you didn't want to do. So I would say that's my 30-second clip on advertisement on why to let go.
Amen. I mean, it's a wild thought, right? It's like we take all this risk and then it's like, oh, I'm doing a job I hate. Like, what is the point?
Yeah. Right. Oh my God, this year especially, because everything's gone topsy-turvy, right? Mm-hmm. Markets are volatile. AI is throwing massive curveballs. The good news is when you get founders together, the conversations get really real really fast, right? I know so many people this year in particular that are like, am I insane? Should I just go get a job? This feels so much harder than it has to be. And I would say, one, you're not crazy. This is a very difficult year to be growing a business. Two, though, I see, and this is going to be counterintuitive as hell for some folks, but I think this is the golden age for founders. I think there's this really exciting opportunity in the disruption of finding the ways to fold AI into your business in unique and novel concepts, or to even think about the spaces where AI is creating new problems to be solved and becoming the expert that, fills that gap. I hear a lot of people, and rightly so, talking about the potential job loss, market loss, things like that with AI. But, we've had big innovations throughout time that have been disrupted. The deployment of the internet, for example. Everybody thought the internet was going to decimate whole industries. And when you look at the net gain of jobs from the opportunities or challenges that the internet created, we came out ahead. And so I think founders thinking about technology smart implementation of their businesses and what it means to be a first mover now, to be able to use that sort of ability to see around corners now, I think this is a really interesting time to be building a business. So if you're on the fence, I would say don't give up. I would say take a slightly different lens on it. you know, come find your people like us, come hang out in generalist world, and we'll help you see some new opportunities that you can leverage to make your sparkle, make your expertise even more valuable out there.
I love this, and I love it because I am a founder. So obviously, my bias is like, yeah, this is the best time. But also, this makes you in a very interesting and exciting position as someone who supports founders and supports their growth. And I was wondering if you could
Yeah.
explain a little bit about like how your job, your business works, because I imagine people are listening to this being like, oh, I would kind of like to do that. So like, what do you do, Caitlin?
Yeah, so we do embedded operations. So we'll come alongside a founder and help them with people, making sure they've got the right folks and they're in the right seats on the bus. Process, which means not only optimizing the process for maximum returns, but thinking about automation, augmentation, AI, where that makes sense. Profitability, so we'll actually work with your financials to understand what's going on under the hood. And then just partnership with the founder, because as you and I both well know, sometimes growing a business is exciting and fun, and then there's days where you really want to shut the door and just scream, and, and it's nice to have somebody else sitting in the room who gets it, who can go, yeah, no, you're absolutely right, that's crazy, and let's talk about how we get out of this, because it's just, and sometimes you just want somebody to celebrate with too. I don't want to make it sound like it's
Yeah.
all bad, but just having the space to be real with somebody else, I think, is its own huge advantage. And on the automation piece, one of the things I found is that a lot of founders are feeling intimidated because they know AI is here. They haven't always had the time to even just fiddle with AI. They're worried there's this giant technical lift that has to happen, or, oh my God, am I going to have a team of developers or whatever? Am I going to have to buy expensive software? And what I'll say to that is, I have found there's operational efficiency that can happen today with a little bit of time, thinking about how your business runs and how you define success, how you think about the work, and then putting together this, what I call a Keystone document, to help AI understand how to collaborate and work within your context, that will make it so much more effective. And you require none of the deep development skills. You don't need to know agentic AI, LLMs, none of it. You just need to have a clear framework for describing what you need back from AI. I had started this experiment because I got very tired of feeling like AI was requiring constant coaching, right? Just all the time I was having to be like, great, but no, and here's another thing. And also, and it got to the point where I felt like, quite frankly, I was basically just unblocking my own writer's block by being like, and here's actually what I need you to do now, and then just doing it. And so what I did is I took a step back and I created a framework that allows me to say, here's what I value. Here's what has to be true for me for something to feel good, to feel done, right? So for me, something has to give first. It has to make people feel seen and exceptional for who they are. Those are things I deeply value. And it shows up in different corners of my work. Another thing is documenting the frameworks you use to think about problems. So when you're taking on somebody into generalist world, you have a matrix in your mind of what would make somebody a good community member. You may not have ever written that down, but an AI tool would be able to take something like that and create a assessment, an auto assessment of applicants. And then the third bucket is prior client example work. So if something was successful in a given context, whether or not I'm consciously thinking about it, I may be going, oh, this reminds me of client X that had a similar problem. And I'm going to pull that into how I solve this, this particular instance with this client. So I think creating that framework for founders to be able to build from, it makes it night and day, the outputs you get from AI. And unfortunately, where we are right now, a lot of AI tools don't have that memory, that continuity just yet. So we put it into one existing document that is platform agnostic. Founders can take it with them anywhere. They can update it and they don't have to go through change management with all of their team members. It's just updated in the document. So that's what we do.
Gold. Seriously, and especially when I switch between like Claude and ChatGPT, I do like the repetition of like, no, I didn't pull that data over. Gold. You called it a Keystone document.
Yes, Keystone document. Yep.
So smart.
Yeah, so it's a facilitated exercise, but it's meant to create clarity within AI outputs and also uniformity across teams. One of the interesting pieces of feedback I got, and I'm still chewing on this, was somebody who I did it with who came back and was like, I actually wish I had had this when I onboarded people. Because we take for granted that there are frameworks that all of us have come into in our career that we maybe haven't documented somewhere to be able to say, hey, this is how I solved this problem. Like, just sharing it for your own information. Or, hey, here's, you don't have to go dig through Google Drive. Here's the example of the thing that was really awesome and the client loved. I'm still figuring out where that feedback fits, but I was intrigued by it. I had a little light bulb moment.
I love. And I will be endeavoring to create a Keystone document for GW. That makes so much sense. Now, whenever I chat, particularly if I chat with you and Robert, I always end up with a beautifully simple new way of seeing the world. And I think what you and Robert just do so like expertly, and now I've just come to expect it, like my expectations of like our conversations are now really high, is that you do have these like frameworks. And I think the frameworks get thrown around a lot, right? It's like, oh, it's a framework, and like, you know, half of them aren't worth the paper they're written on. But I think the really, really good ones come from working with 100 founders and then simplifying this into a simple, easy to remember way, like mental model. And I'm curious, it can be about AI or it can be about whatever you like. But is there like a framework or maybe even two that you come back to all the time that you're like, oh, I wish more people knew about this way of seeing the world?
Oh, yeah. Well, and some of it just comes from solving your own personal pain points, right?
So true.
I remember one that I stumbled upon. I don't know if I've invented it, but at least at the time, it felt new to me. When I was starting out growing my own business for the first time, I remember one thing I got really bogged down in was making what felt like a high stakes decision and then going back and replaying it in my mind, replaying it in my mind, replaying it in my mind. And I finally just created this framework where I was like, you know what? No, I need to develop something that helps me trust my instincts more. And so what I did at the time was what I now call decision journaling. Quick format. I'm making this decision. Here's the context that went into that. Here's the outcome I think that's going to happen with what I know today. And then shut the notebook and don't come back to it until the thing happened. Now, inevitably, there were times where I learned I had blind spots. But the majority of it was me realizing like, okay, no, like I can trust that my foresight matches, you know, outcomes in these particular circumstances, or no, I really need to grow as a leader, as a person, and recalibrate in these areas. But I think, yeah, you well know, so much of being a founder is making decisions on limited information on the fly. And so building up that confidence through decision journaling is an important one. Another quick one that's way well more established that I use frequently with my founders is a leadership model called situational leadership. So back to your callback about helping founders let go. Situational leadership looks at how do you actively progress someone to the point where your reins are fully in their hands, you're hands off, you trust that they're ready, and it gives you sort of a progressive 4-block framework that says, you know what, nope, this person is at the stage where I'm sitting down next to them and we are going through this activity step by step. And it gives you as a leader the steps to recognize, like, when do you kind of push or pull, depending on your perspective, them into the next square Or what are the signs that they're ready and you're kind of being the one that's holding on a little too tight? Because the goal should never be like, in startup, we don't end up having the budget where we can hire the $300,000 people that we can just throw at the thing and they do it perfectly, right? And on a personal value standpoint, I don't actually believe people work that way anyway. But situational leadership gives you more of a checklist to say, you know what, this person is ready for the next step. This person is ready for me to be hands off. This person might actually need a little bit more support and I need to plan for that. Or I need to find them a resource that will help them. So I love that one. It's a well-known leadership framework. It's not a Caitlin TM original.
Don't come at us. Don't come at us. Copyright, please.
Yes. Yeah.
I love, and we could literally just continue down this thread of like Caitlin's wisdom with founders, but I'm curious as well. I know that there's going to be people listening and maybe they are on the fence about starting their own consultancy, a fractional consultancy, their own kind of like basically their jump into self-employment. And I wonder if you can remember when you kind of take yourself back to when you were first setting up your business, is there anything that you know now that you would tell Caitlin then to either do or not do that might really just make your journey a bit easier?
The first business I built, we were all really young. We were all in our 20s. And we grew it and we sold it. We grew it to national presence and we sold it. And I remember at the time, I believed at the time we were disadvantaged by age because we had all these people around us who had come up in their own businesses or in corporate or whatever. And we didn't know what they knew. And looking back now, I realize that was probably more of a superpower than I was giving myself credit for at the time because we weren't following a playbook. We were blazing our own trail and there wasn't a pre-programmed floor where we felt like we should stop. And because of that, I think we ended up with an extremely well-run organization. And we weren't satisfied stopping there. I think there are folks where, they're jumping out, depending on whatever role they're jumping out of, they may incidentally try to create mini corporate. And that's, for a whole nother podcast episode worth of reasons, going to be detrimental to them and the business both, right? Now, I will say, the inverse of that, though, is for anybody who's considering starting their own thing, get really clear on whether or not you enjoy sales or how you would make sales enjoyable for you. Because if you don't do that part, there is no build it and they will come. Our work involves, particularly if you're going into professional services or consulting in any kind of way, our work is in large part sales and relationships and thought leadership and putting yourself out there. So, if you're inclined that like you would rather not have to do a sales call, not have to do a consultative exploratory call, team up with somebody else. You probably are an excellent expert with so much to give. If that's going to drain you, don't do this work. That will be the make or break in a lot of the businesses. So
I think that's great advice. And I think what I can imagine, I'm putting myself in the shoes of our many listeners and they'll be saying, but I'm scared of sales, or sales are icky, or I hate sales.
Yeah.
What if you learned about sales that makes it not icky and makes it more enjoyable?
I remember sitting down with one of my mentors not that long ago, pre the push I've been doing on LinkedIn over the past couple of years, and talking to her about how silly I thought posting on LinkedIn and stuff was. To me at the time, it felt like standing on a chair in the middle of a restaurant and just like shouting your opinion. Like, here we go. Here's what I think about today's market. Like, and she stopped me and she was like, do you at your core genuinely believe that you can help people with what you know? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, then why are you uncomfortable sharing that knowledge to possibly help somebody get unblocked on something? And I don't know why it took her putting it that way for it to unblock me, but I think it has to be a similar frame shift for folks with sales stuff. Like, it'll feel icky if you're just centered on it being a transaction. If instead you are just thinking about this as, hey, this person is struggling, or could be struggling, you may not know, with X. I know how to get that sticky spot to go away. I know in my core, I can make life easier. I can make their, workload better. I can make their business more successful. I can make their hair more beautiful. I don't know, whatever it is. Like, if you genuinely believe in that, then you come at it from a helper standpoint, not from a, let me tell you why I'm awesome and you should bask in my glory kind of way, which is where I think a lot of people start to feel ick. Just go into it as a problem solver and a translator. Tell me what's up. If I told you that the horizon looked like this without the changes, how would that make you feel? Could we talk about how we make this less of a problem for you? And to your point, sales is a skill. It's not something that is unlearnable. If you're intimidated by it, lean in. You're not, what's the worst that could happen from, taking a chance and figuring it out?
Yeah, it's such a skill, and I completely believe it is learnable. I think if you had asked me even 18 months ago, I would have been in the camp of like, I didn't even necessarily think it was icky. I just thought I was a bit crap at it. Like, I was like, oh, I just don't know how to do it. I just don't know what it is. But like now, funnily enough, it has become one of my favorite parts of my job. And I think the big shift has been, I feel like I'm doing people a favor when I invite them in, when I'm like, you are gonna love it. Like, you're it. Like, come in. And I think I figured that out with like our community memberships. And it's when I got really clear on like who this really would help. Sales became easy because it's just like, hey, I've got it good and come on in. The interesting part was translating that skill to B2B. So this year, in the past like 4 or 5 months, I've started selling sponsorships, and obviously they are at a much larger rate than memberships. And for some reason in my head, I was like, this is completely different. But then I caught myself on. I was like, actually, same thing. Like, hey, sponsor, you're going to love this. Like, this is the perfect alignment. It's going to be so much fun. This is the way we're going to do it. And every single sponsor, we've knocked it out of the park. Like, amazing alignment. And then that makes like renewals easy. It makes like the relationships easy. So sales is sick. I love sales.
Yeah.
New thing.
Well, and one of your natural superpowers too is, I think, figuring out fairly quickly what is motivating someone, how to relate that driver back to either what you have available or what's going on in the team. Like, your brain just draws very natural connections. I think for some folks, that actually may be a first stumbling block. Like, once they have that information, sales gets unlocked, but getting to the like, okay, what do these people actually care about and need feels a bit daunting. To that, I would say there's one book I love. You've probably heard me talk about this. I hate the title of the book. It's called The Mom Test. But what it does is it teaches people how to go out and interview others so that you are genuinely getting to the root of what it is they need and desire. The reason it's called the mom test is because he draws the story of, if these are the kinds of questions that you would go and ask your mom, and your mom would be excited for you because you're excited and you have a relationship and she wants to see you be happy, then you're going to get lied to. And so I think the story goes like, if I came up with a cookbook idea and I was like, Millie, it's going to have my family recipes, it'll picture my Nana, can I add you to the mailing list? Because we have a friendship, you're probably going to be like, sure, add me to the mailing list. And then I get a false signal of buyer intent. Versus if I come to you and I say, Millie, when was the last time you bought a cookbook? How much did you spend on it? You'll be like, I bought a cookbook for Mother's Day 15 years ago and I spent 20 quid and I've never looked at a cookbook since. I go on Pinterest. Because you don't feel like you have to lie to me. I'm just asking you questions about things you've done in the past. So I think that's an important tool in the toolkit to help people get to your point. If you know motivations, if you know pain points, and you feel like you can step in and help folks there, it really gets less tricky.
And nerdy reference number well, I don't know if it's number one, but the one I'm actually like naming is I actually haven't read the mum test, and it's because I don't need to, because Caitlin once sent me her entire notes, like amazing notes from the mum test, and I was like, sweet. Shortcut. And I was like, you should make this a product. It's so good. Stand by that.
Well, so I don't know how to do that because it's partly inspired by the book, and then a lot of it was also like pitfalls I've fallen into as well. But I need to think about that. I need to figure out how to make that happen.
Valuable.
I also I have this strong desire to be like an on-call hype person, because you and I are the same in that, like, we meet somebody and we're like, oh my God, this is how you are exceptional. Like, how do you not see that you are exceptional? On my whiteboard of things is how do I make that available to more folks, either the job hunting or they're wanting to increase their consulting prices or whatever. So on the whiteboard, everybody gets kicked away from the whiteboard. On my whiteboard is something along those lines. So
I reckon, Caitlin, we should just do an IRL event and be the hype people. And I imagine the ROI out of that event for people.
Oh my God. Can we do like kissing booths, but just like, let me tell you why you're awesome. Like, I would be so there for that. I would fly back to the UK to make that happen. I live in Atlanta, so it's a bit of a hike, but I would make it occur. We just have to do it between now and, the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. 2025 is the year.
Oh.
I love it. We can noodle on that on Slack for sure. I think that'd be super cool. What has been your favorite job that you've ever had?
Oh my God. Have I had one favorite? Oh my God, Millie, you might have stumped me. You might have found the one thing that would get me to shut up. I don't know that I've had one favorite, because I feel like I was learning and growing in something each time.
Okay, ask differently.
Okay.
Your favorite pivot?
I think going out on my own again was probably one of my favorites, just because it was rooted in community-based kind of awareness. People, Katie in particular, pushing me to be a little bit more real about the impact that I had had and how I could grow that impact and multiply it. Because I think any of us in our career end up at this moment where we're like, you feel like you're at a crossroads, and it's almost like an identity definition moment. And for me, the thing I was coming up against at the time was that, yes, Katie helped me figure out that there was this $20 million impact. I also really struggled with claiming that as my win. Because to me, if I'm coming in and I'm helping your business grow, your business thrive, that's your win. This is why I didn't necessarily have a catalog of it. So I had to undo some stuff in my own brain to say, no, I know I was influential at this moment. I know I had the right resource or the right connection or the terrible joke or whatever it was that helped get things going out of a dead position. So I think that was an important pivot, because it forced me to uproot some, I think, maybe not bad learnings, but at least things that weren't serving me at the time. It is still true that I think about these things as client wins, but I'm also more comfortable saying, and here was my piece of that puzzle. There's no business that is a solo sport. So
true.
It's okay to say, this was the square I played on, and this is the outcome we all got to, and not feel like you're inauthentically just kind of owning the win.
It's such a funny irony, because to your point of like us being the hype people for others, I know that you would be saying that to other people. Like, this is what you would be communicating, but it's always like, there's something about the lesson when it's your lesson that it's harder. What is that?
Yeah. Oh, if I knew, I would productize the hell out of that. I think it's so much easier to sort of just see the magnificence in someone who's across from you, who can tell you the story of the things they've overcome to get there. And you can see their skills in action, whether or not they're sort of owning them outright. You know, psychologists exist for a reason. I think the self-exploration piece is a little bit harder for most humans. So it's probably more the human condition than anything within our shared influence. But this is why we have communities, right? We have communities of people who can lovingly tell you when you're missing something obvious or have the opportunity to grow. And that's, you know, that's the power of something like Generalist World.
We've reached the part of the episode where we are at the human condition. It's great to be here. I'm glad we've arrived. I want to know, what are you fired up about at the moment, and, you know, what's coming up for you? What are you really excited about?
Yeah, couple of things, couple of irons in the fire. So in September or October of 2025, we're going to be launching a podcast as well. A friend, Rob Rip, and I, he is a deeply experienced CFO, and I think he's helped founders get to like $200 or $300 million in exit value. Also 20 years of dealing with over 100 founders on his side of the fence, and the same here. And so it's called Grounds for Growth, the podcast. So we'll be talking about the real of what it's like, and some advice that we've run into, and some stories of things that we've seen. Rob's really good people. He wrote a book called Finance for Founders that I actually have on my required reading list for my clients now, in part because it's just a story-based book of how to do the finances of your business. You can read it in an hour. It doesn't feel like you're taking an accounting course. So anyway, plug for Rob. Another thing is I will be in London in October. There's the conference for Operations Nation, which is Europe's largest conference of operators. There's going to be about 300 of us folks all gathering, and I will be leading a workshop on AI. Again, coming at this from, hey, you know AI is here, you've played with ChatGPT, but how do you make it operational within the business? We'll be running that workshop with folks on Monday the 20th, I believe. So if you've not gotten your ticket for that, come on down. We can hang out. Epic. We will do AI things together. Yes.
With that workshop, is it like a sneak peek or like a sneak takeaway that's like one of your favorite things that you're putting together for that workshop that people can get a little preview?
Yeah, so we'll be going through some of the framework for that Keystone document. And
cool.
My goal is that by the end of that workshop, people will have something that measurably improves the time to do their work today. I don't want them to feel like they've got to do no steep learning curves here. I want you to walk out having something that you can deploy that will make life easier. So I'll give you one quick example on how to make this tangible. With my Keystone document, I can take a recording of a sales call and feed it in to the LLM I work with. And it knows enough of the frameworks to do a client fit assessment, to tell me, you know what, based on what you've seen before, here's some reasons we should work with these folks. Here's some orange or red flags. Based on that, based on the problems that they've identified in the conversation, here are the services that align. Based on, and I check off at this point, based on that, we're going to map it into a template that we've used for client proposals before, using some of the language that they've highlighted that, you know, that gets to that show me, you know me piece about like, if I talk about a problem a certain way, play it back. So that whole process, end to end, 5 to 10 minutes, not hours and hours of proposal writing. Not a technical lift. And anybody in professional services or consulting who's ever had to write a proposal and a scope of work knows that's not the part any of us wake up just jazzed to do. It's detail oriented and technical, and you know, if you can save yourself a couple of hours of work today, then yeah, let's jump at it.
Yes. Amazing. I think there will be some GW folks in and around that conference. I think maybe Agnes is going. So that'd be great. That'd be so cool. I'm excited to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you're like, oh, I really wish I could have had a chance to talk about this while I had the mic?
Oh, what would you say you're proudest of with having built Generalist World as the founder?
I had a real moment last week for the second International Generalist Day, which is now a thing and hilarious. The first one was funny. The second one was like, oh, holy crap. 3,000 people are meeting in 88 different places around the world. Holy crap.
Yeah.
And there was a moment during that day. We had 5 events alone in London, like a thousand plus people gathering in London. And we had like a host group chat. And I don't know what it is about generalists, but I swear they're comedians. Like that group chat was so funny. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
there is something about it. Someone needs to research it. It's so funny. And I was just checking out this group chat, which was like nonstop because it was all over the world. So all the different time zones were happening. And there was a moment where it was like a meetup in Paraguay, a meetup in Nigeria, a meetup in South Africa,
Yeah.
a meetup in Sydney. And I was just like, wow. And the feeling was complete emotion, like
Oh,
complete
sure.
elated, like, wow, these are real humans really meeting in places I have never even been.
Right.
Wow. That feels,
Yeah.
and the second part of that was the effort that hosts went to. Like, let's be honest, Edger and I, we're pretty relaxed when it comes to these things. We made sure the events were safe. That was our main thing. We were like, safe events
Yeah.
needed. Everything else be creative. We've got picnics, people went to art galleries, we had loads of different things. And what really took me aback was the effort that people went. People had like banners made. And I was like, I've never even
Oh,
had a banner.
wow.
Yeah, surprising. Like, as in, I didn't even know it was happening until I saw the picture. There were full banners, and like people were taking over. Like, there was one group in Pakistan that took over this cafe for like 6 or 7 hours. Like, they kept texting like, "We're still here." I was like, "Oh God, wild!"
Yeah.
And it was all just very real. I think when we work in this digital world, especially I live on this little island where sometimes
Hmm.
it can feel very surreal and a little bit like disconnected from the reality of like, shit, these are real people who are really meeting. And so I would say this whole year, in fact, I feel like GW has turned a bit of a corner where we've just grown up a little bit. We've found our stride a little
Yeah.
bit. And I feel really, really confident in the business. And I think that probably comes across in how everyone feels about like being involved in GW. But I would say, yeah, our second IGD, I was immensely proud of how that went.
I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I talk to founders who are considering community building or who are particularly feeling stuck and under resourced, I will bring you up actually because you have built successfully a movement from an island of 300 people, and it is because of the kind of care and attention that you show up with. You've created a community that people have craved. They've craved feeling seen and part of something. And I think a big part of that is your ability to not only just see where people are and what makes them exceptional, but also like you deeply want to amplify all of these exciting people around you. And I think that cultural piece transcends. And so I think this is the impact of who you are as a person showing up in something like International Generalist Day. And, you know, I take it, I do, I share it with other founders that are stuck. I'm like, look, if she can pull off bringing together 3,000 people to get together in person on a day around the globe, or 75,000 people who listen to her message of what it means to be a generalist in this new era, like, it's doable.
Yeah,
Just follow
totally.
the passion. Yeah.
Follow the
So,
passion. And there is so something to just, it sounds cheesy, but just being yourself. Like, I think if I
Yeah.
had tried to follow this like well-trodden path of like, this is what a thought leader is, and this is like, it wouldn't have worked for me. And I would have like
Right.
flailed out and I would have burned out. But instead, I'm just like, oh, I actually just get to be myself and share the parts that feel good. I don't, certainly,
Yep.
there are so many parts of me in my life that are sacred, that don't get shared, that don't get airtime. But I'm like, okay, this feels good
Sure.
to share. And then that becomes work. And I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of like, this can be work. This does create value. And yeah, how can we get more people doing the work that lights them up and also
Yeah.
creates value in the world?
On that note, I think I've just realized that we've talked this entire time and I haven't given people a sense of where on earth to find me or my business name.
Go, go, go. Go, Caitlin.
So, on the outro, if you are someone looking to figure out how to make your business exciting and unique to you and something that you thrive in, you can find us at coopilots.io. That's coopilots.io, or on LinkedIn. I am frequently engaging with folks on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. I'm sure Millie will post the link.
I sure will be amplifying. There is no world where that isn't going to be happening. Wow, yeah, Caitlin. Okay, yeah, we're at time. Thank you so much. And it just flew by. And I'm so grateful to have you as a friend and a member and just someone in my circle.
Likewise, friend.
Thanks, Caitlin.